A millionaire did something that involved neither charity nor a promise. He placed his own credit card in the hands of a single mother with nothing. No clear limits, no immediate charges. Everything depended on her choices, and those choices changed their lives forever. Ethan Walker was 45 years old and a respected name in the Texas real estate market. He came from the working class and built everything without taking shortcuts, turning risk into wealth. Each building purchased carried with it the weight of a difficult choice made years before. Becoming a millionaire was never about luxury, but about proving something to yourself. Success brought stability, but also a silent distance from people. Over time, he began to observe more than to participate. Something inside him began to close up without him realizing it. Initially, Ethan believed that helping was part of doing the right thing. He helped friends, acquaintances, and even strangers who came to him with urgent stories. Some of these chances turned into real opportunities, others were just empty promises. Each disappointment left a subtle but deep mark. Trust was gradually replaced by caution, then by coldness. He learned that money has the power to expose hidden intentions, and this realization changed the way he saw the world. Over the years, pleas for help began to sound like warnings. No matter the story, there was always a doubt in the back of the mind. Ethan came to associate need with manipulation, even unintentionally. The empathy that once came easily now required effort. For him, trusting became a calculated risk, never a spontaneous gesture. Every favor granted seemed to exact an invisible price afterward, so helping stopped being natural and became the exception. Despite this, no one would call him cruel or indifferent. He paid taxes, created jobs, and fulfilled his responsibilities. To outsiders, he was an example of character and success. But internally, something didn't match that image. He wondered when helping became synonymous with losing. The answer never came clearly, only a persistent discomfort. This discomfort grew silently. Ethan began to believe that kindness was a misunderstood luxury. For him, boundless generosity created dependency, not dignity. Each sad story seemed to follow an overly predictable script. This caused him to build very high emotional walls, walls that protected them, but also isolated them. Even surrounded by achievements, something felt incomplete. He still didn't know what was missing. In meetings and events, Ethan smiled automatically. The conversations revolved around numbers, contracts, and forecasts. Nothing there truly touched who he was outside of his social role. The emptiness did not come from lack, but from meaningless excess. It was a different kind of financial struggle, difficult to explain. He had everything he wanted, except purpose. And that was starting to bother him more than any financial loss. Deep down, Ethan felt that his vision had become too hardened. Something kept him away from the real-life stories that were happening far from his circle. He didn't know when he lost that basic human connection. I only realized that looking at someone asking for help was no easy task. Doubt always came before the heart. Without realizing it, he was about to be confronted by it, and this change would come from where he least expected it. Ethan's success filled spreadsheets, but it didn't fill his days. The mornings started the same way, predictable, without surprise or real expectation. He had enough money not to worry about tomorrow. Still, something inside him always seemed outdated, out of place. It wasn't overt sadness, it was an absence that was difficult to name. An inner silence that arose when everything became quiet. And the more he ignored it, the more present it became. At night, alone at home, Ethan relived old decisions. He thought about the difficult choices that had led him to that point. I remembered the young man who believed that winning also meant lifting others up. This thought would come quickly and go away just as quickly. He wondered when he had lost that version of himself. There was no clear remorse, only bewilderment. How could someone so successful feel so disconnected? Requests for help began to provoke tension, not compassion. Each story seemed like a potential problem waiting to happen. He analyzed risks like someone evaluating a bad contract. Human connection has been replaced by emotional calculation. Empathy still existed, but it was stuck halfway. The mind always came before the heart, and that made him uncomfortable with himself. Ethan knew it wasn't a lack of character or moral values. He still believed in dignity and responsibility. I just couldn't trust anything coming from the outside anymore. The world seemed to ask for too much and give back too little. This way of thinking protected him, but it also isolated him. It was a defense that came at a high price, and he was beginning to feel the cost of it every day. In casual conversations, he would find himself keeping his distance. I heard stories of struggle, but couldn't really get involved. He responded politely, but without any real presence. It was as if he were always observing his own life from the outside. Nothing seemed urgent, nothing seemed alive. This emptiness didn't scream, but it didn't disappear either. It remained there, persistent, like a warning. The strangest thing was realizing that nothing external would solve it. More money wouldn't change that feeling. Another achievement would just be another number on the tally sheet. He needed something that you can't buy with a credit card, something that had meaning, not status, but I had no idea where to find it. This uncertainty made him uneasy. Ethan began to suspect that there were people missing from the equation, not contacts, not business deals, but real people. Stories that don't ask but teach. Lives go on despite the financial hardship. He didn't know it yet, but this discomfort was a sign something was about to cross his path, and that would change everything in an unexpected way. Sarah Miller was 32 years old and lived in a small town in Ohio, one of those where almost everyone knows each other by their first name. Her routine began early before sunrise, preparing simple coffee and quietly tidying the house so as not to wake the children. She didn't see herself as a victim of life, just as someone doing what needed to be done. Being a single mother was never a planned choice, but it became a responsibility she accepted without fanfare. There was no room for drama when their lives depended on her. Sarah kept going because stopping was never a real option. She worked at a local market, holding a position that almost no one notices, but which kept everything running. She spent hours on her feet, dealing with hurried customers, precise calculations, and small daily pressures. Her salary barely covered the basics, but she stretched every penny with almost mathematical care. She never received a pension, never had consistent support. The system seemed not to see her existence. Even so, she showed up every day, did her job properly, and returned home with dignity. Financial struggle was a silent part of her life. It wasn't a drama recounted aloud. It was something lived in the details. Sarah knew exactly how much she could spend and how much she needed to hold back. Any unforeseen event required tough choices, made without witnesses. Even so, she maintained a firm, almost proud stance. She didn't want pity, she wanted respect. For her, surviving honestly was already a daily victory. Her children were the center of everything, even when exhaustion took over. Sarah made a point of hiding her worries behind simple smiles. The children didn't need to carry the weight of overdue bills or sleepless nights. She believed that protecting them was also an act of love. Every small sacrifice was made in silence, like a quiet sacrifice that no one applauded. Still, she carried on with a quiet hope for better days. Sarah didn't dream of wealth or grand changes. What she wanted was stability, something she never truly had. A month without fear, a predictable routine, a little air to breathe. She saw opportunity as something distant, almost abstract. Life had taught her that promises are rarely kept. That's why she trusted her own effort more than any external help. Trust, for her, was something built slowly. Even when tired, Sarah maintained her moral values intact. She didn't accept easy shortcuts or choices that would make her lose respect for herself. She believed that character is revealed when no one is watching. She did what was right because it was right, not expecting reward. This stance didn't bring immediate comfort, but it preserved something essential: the feeling of still being the master of her own story. Unbeknownst to her, Sarah was living a real-life story, one that went unnoticed by almost everyone. Invisible to statistics, distant from important decisions, but profoundly human. She never imagined that her simple routine would intersect with someone from a completely different world, much less that this encounter would put to the test everything she believed about help, dignity, and second chances. Something was about to break through this invisibility, and nothing would ever be the same again. Sarah's life was built upon decisions no one saw, but which defined everything. Every month, she sat at the kitchen table with the bills scattered around, analyzing numbers that never quite added up. It wasn't about what she wanted to pay, but about what needed to be prioritized at that moment. Sometimes the rent came first. Other times the electricity bill demanded urgent attention. Each choice carried an invisible weight. She didn't dramatize, she just solved things. That was her way of moving forward. Sarah learned early on that you can't have everything when you live on the edge. The tight budget demanded discipline and an almost trained calm. She calculated every expense as if protecting something fragile. There was no room for impulses or mistakes. A small slip could compromise entire weeks. Even so, she never let fear guide her decisions. The focus was on keeping the house running, even if on the edge. Her children always came before anything else. Before personal comfort, before a desire held for years, Sarah detested anything that could be postponed when their well-being was at stake. New clothes for her were never a priority. A full plate on their table, yes. This pattern of choice wasn't a conscious sacrifice. It was almost instinct. A form of love that doesn't ask for recognition. She didn't complain because she knew that complaining wouldn't change reality. She learned to swallow her frustrations and move on with her day. At work, she maintained a firm stance, even on the most tiring days. At home, she sought to create a light atmosphere. Despite her limitations, this silent resilience was what sustained everything, a kind of strength born from necessity, not from words, and one that is rarely noticed by those on the outside. The nights were the only time the weight of her actions surfaced. When the children slept, Sarah mentally reviewed every decision she had made. She questioned whether she had chosen correctly, whether she could have done something differently. Even so, she never allowed herself to sink into those thoughts. Tomorrow, there would be new bills, new choices, new responsibilities, and she needed to be ready. Life didn't wait. Even facing constant financial difficulties, Sarah maintained something intact, the feeling of doing what was right within her means. Doing the right thing, for her, wasn't grand. It was a daily occurrence. It was getting up early, doing her work, and returning home. It was choosing carefully, even when it hurt. This inner consistency kept her going. Without realizing it, each silent choice shaped who she was. It built a strong character, sustained by responsibility and dignity. Sarah never imagined that anyone from the outside would notice this someday, much less that these small decisions would be observed with attention. The world went on without looking at her. But this fragile balance was about to be disrupted, and the next step would come from an unlikely place. The meeting between Ethan and Sarah happened simply, almost casually, through a community initiative aimed at families in the region. There were no spotlights, speeches, or expectations of major changes. Ethan was there more out of curiosity than conviction, trying to understand firsthand the realities he had always observed from a distance. For him, it seemed like just another social commitment. For Sarah, it was just another ordinary day, squeezed between work and household chores. Neither of them imagined that this discrete moment would have real significance. Sarah had no idea who Ethan was or what he represented outside of work. To her, he was just another face among the many volunteers and participants. She had no interest in impressing anyone, only in doing what needed to be done. She moved naturally, helping when she could, keeping her attention on her children and simple tasks. She didn't seek prominence or recognition. Her presence was discreet, almost invisible. Ethan, on the other hand, observed in silence. Not out of immediate judgment, but out of habit. He noticed Sarah's posture, her restrained manner, the weariness that didn't turn into complaints. There was something there that didn't match the exaggerated stories he was used to hearing. She didn't ask for anything, didn't over-explain, didn't dramatize. She was simply there, doing her part. That caught his attention effortlessly. What intrigued Ethan most was the absence of victimhood. Sarah didn't use her condition as a justification or an argument. Every gesture of hers carried responsibility, not expectation. It was a rare attitude, especially in environments where requests usually come before actions. He noticed this in the details, in the way she spoke little and did much. This posture contradicted his recent beliefs about asking for help. While they chatted casually, Ethan noticed that Sarah chose her words carefully. There was no rush, no attempt to make an impact. She spoke of her routine simply, without hiding difficulties, but without exaggerating them. It was a direct honesty, without embellishment. This awakened in him a forgotten feeling of immediate respect, not out of pity, but out of recognizing character. Sarah, without realizing it, shattered expectations simply by being herself. She didn't try to appear strong, she just acted as she needed to. For Ethan, that was more revealing than any speech about struggle or overcoming adversity. For the first time in a long time, he felt genuine curiosity about a story that didn't come with requests. This made him uncomfortable and interested at the same time. At the end of the meeting, Ethan left with the feeling that something had been left unresolved. It wasn't compassion nor obligation, it was a different kind of unease. Sarah returned home as usual, without imagining that she had been observed with such attention. Two distinct worlds had crossed paths for a few moments, and even without clear words, a decision was beginning to form in silence. Something was about to be put to the test. A few days after the meeting, Ethan returned to that community initiative with a nagging feeling he couldn't ignore. The image of Sarah, always composed and responsible, lingered insistently in his mind. He didn't have an elaborate plan or a clear intention to help this time. There was no mental script, no strategy, just the feeling that he needed to act differently than he always had. Something simple but completely out of character for him. When he met Sarah again, he didn't start with long questions or generic comments. He spoke directly, almost uncomfortably for both of them. He said he had observed her posture, her care for her children, and how she dealt with her own reality. He didn't promise to change her life or offer magical solutions. He simply explained that he wanted to help in a practical way, without creating expectations he couldn't fulfill. Then came the proposal, unexpected and difficult to accept. Ethan offered his own credit card without any formal conditions. There was no contract, no defined deadline or explicit control. There was also no motivational speech, nor any attempt to appear inspiring. He was clear in saying that this was a test of trust, a gesture that put at risk something he had always protected. Sarah listened in silence, trying to understand what was being said. The proposal didn't seem real, nor safe. It was out of place, almost absurd for someone like her. Help, when it came, was usually limited and full of demands. This was the opposite. a gesture too grand, too simple, and therefore frightening. Ethan didn't try to convince her. He didn't explain why in detail, nor did he ask for anything in return. He simply said that she would know how to use it better than he did. For someone accustomed to controlling everything, that surrender was a leap into the dark. It wasn't charity, it was a conscious choice to trust. And that made him vulnerable in a new way. The silence between them was tense. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility even before accepting it. Ethan felt the fear of making the same mistake as before. Neither of them was sure what this would mean afterward, but there was a mutual respect there that prevented the conversation from sounding absurd. It was uncomfortable, yes, but also honest. At that moment, an invisible line was crossed. For Sarah, it put her dignity at stake. For Ethan, it tested everything he believed about people and choices. There were no guarantees, only the possibility of a second chance for both of us. The gesture had been made, even before the final answer, and what came next would reveal much more than any words could explain. As soon as she was alone, Sarah felt the weight of the offer fall upon her all at once. The idea of accepting that help deeply troubled her. It wasn't empty pride, it was fear of losing something she had carefully preserved. Accepting money in that way seemed like a misstep, almost an unnecessary exposure. The feeling of humiliation came even before any concrete decision. She had always managed on her own, and this disrupted everything she knew. Sarah was afraid of seeming self-serving, even though she knew she had never acted that way. The opinions of others, even unspoken ones, weighed more heavily on her than she cared to admit. She wondered how it would be perceived if anyone knew. The help came without clear demands, and that made everything even more uncomfortable. For her, things without apparent cost almost always hid something, and that thought wouldn't leave her in peace. That night, lying in bed, Sarah heard the peaceful breathing of her children in the next room. It was there that the decision began to take shape. It wasn't about her, it never was. It was about ensuring a minimum of safety for those two children. She thought about the overdue bills, the accumulated fatigue, the tight choices of each month. Responsibility spoke louder than pride. Even so, accepting didn't bring relief. It came with guilt, fear, and many doubts. Sarah didn't feel comfortable with the situation, but she also didn't feel irresponsible for considering it. She knew that this help could be a rare opportunity, not for luxury, but to breathe a little. Still, the emotional risk seemed too high. She mentally rehearsed several responses, trying to find a dignified way to say yes. She didn't want to seem too grateful or too distant. She wanted to maintain self-respect. She knew that this gesture would require even more care and discipline from her. Accepting meant carrying a responsibility she couldn't fail at, and that scared her more than the lack of money. When she finally decided to accept, there was no enthusiasm or immediate relief. There was a silent agreement with herself. She would use it consciously, without excess, without deviation. Every choice would be thought through twice. Sarah didn't see it as a favor, but as a test of character, a moment that could define who she really was. When she announced her decision, her voice was restrained, almost too firm. There were no exaggerated thanks or empty promises, just a cautious yes, tinged with apprehension. She knew that this step would change something, even without knowing exactly what. The fear was still there, but now it walked hand in hand with responsibility. And from then on, every choice would be closely observed. In the first few days with the card in hand, Sarah felt more burdened than free. Every time she thought about using it, an automatic pause would come, almost an internal break. She didn't see that resource as available money, but as a borrowed responsibility. Before any decision, she would take a deep breath and think about what really needed to be done. There was no room for impulses or curiosity. The fear of making a mistake spoke loudly. The first expense was simple and straightforward. Better food for home, nothing more than that. Basic products, chosen with the same care as always, just with a little more quality. Nothing extravagant, nothing that would draw attention. Sarah was thinking about her children, their health, what made sense in the long term. For her, this wasn't a gift. It was a course correction, a small adjustment to make the routine less harsh. Next came the overdue bills. She calmly organized everything, as if she were fixing something that had been out of place for too long. Each payment brought more responsibility than relief. There was no feeling of victory, only the awareness of doing the right thing. Sarah knew that getting her house in order was the first step towards any stability. It was basic, but it made all the difference. At no point did she consider anything superfluous. It never crossed her mind to buy something for herself, nor to try something she'd never had. Her mindset was clear: resolve what was pending and protect what mattered. That choice revealed much about her character. There was no need for external surveillance, because control came from within. Sarah treated every expense as if she were being watched, even though she wasn't. Not out of fear of judgment, but out of respect for the trust she had received. Trust, for her, wasn't abstract. It was a continuous action. Every decision needed to honor that. She knew that any excess would break something difficult to rebuild, and she wasn't willing to take that risk. Gradually, the house began to feel different, not because of luxury, but because of organization. The atmosphere became lighter, the weight lessened a little. There was still financial hardship, but now with less urgency. Sarah didn't celebrate, she just carried on. She knew that this moment demanded even more attention than before. Without realizing it, her first steps already said a lot about who she was. The card didn't change her values, it only exposed them more clearly. There was no euphoria, only awareness. Each silent choice reinforced her dignity. And while she continued at this careful pace, someone watched from a distance, expecting something completely different. It was during an ordinary situation that something changed inside Sarah. Entering a simple, unassuming store, she strolled through the aisles without haste. She wasn't looking for anything specific, just observing. Then she saw basic children's clothing, modestly arranged, without any special features. There was no luxury, no flashy brands, just simple and functional pieces. Even so, it made her heart clench. Sarah stopped in front of the shelves and stood there for a few seconds, motionless. She thought about how many times she had had to postpone this type of purchase, how many times she had improvised, adjusted, reused. The clothes she saw didn't represent excess. They represented care. It was the kind of thing that many families consider normal. But for her, it always required extreme planning. That contrast hit her unexpectedly. She hesitated more than with any other expense, not out of financial uncertainty, but emotional. Something about it touched an old wound. The idea of being able to choose without cutting back on another need seemed wrong, almost unfair. Sarah felt her eyes welling up and turned her face away so no one would notice. She cried silently, without drama, without haste. It wasn't sadness, it was a mixture of relief and accumulated exhaustion. At that moment, she understood that she wasn't buying for appearances. There was no vanity involved. It was a matter of dignity, of allowing her children to have something simple but new, without patching, without improvisation. A small gesture, but full of meaning. She wanted them to feel cared for, not different. That was more important than any paid bill. As Sarah carried the clothes to the checkout, she felt a different kind of weight. It wasn't guilt, it was conscious responsibility. She knew exactly why she was doing it. There was no exaggeration, just a legitimate emotional need. This gesture didn't break her values. On the contrary, it reaffirmed them. It was a choice made with her heart aligned with reason, As she left the store, she took a deep breath, as if she were going through something important. There was no euphoria, just a strange calm. Sarah realized that this moment marked an internal turning point. For the first time, she felt not only survival, but care. Not something grand, but enough to change the tone of her routine. Without knowing it, that silent decision said much more than any explanation. It showed who she was when she had a choice. As she walked home, simple bags in hand, something began to reorganize itself within her, and this change, though subtle, would still have greater consequences. Something was heading beyond her control. After that moment in the store, Sarah began to look at the car differently, not as an immediate solution, but as a choice that was still open. She realized she could continue resolving pending issues, alleviating urgent matters, and that would already be a lot. But something inside her asked for a pause. For the first time, she didn't just think about the present. She thought about tomorrow, even without knowing exactly what it would be like. Sarah stopped spending for a few days, not out of fear, but out of reflection. She sat down at the kitchen table again, now without haste, and did some calculations differently. Instead of just dividing what was left, she tried to imagine possibilities. It was strange to think about the future when she had always lived on the edge. Still, that idea began to take shape. Not as a distant dream, but as a concrete chance. That's when she considered investing in something that had always been out of reach. A simple, accessible vocational course, but with real potential. Nothing sophisticated, nothing promising miraculous changes. Just an opportunity to learn something new and broaden her options. For Sarah, this meant more than just qualifications. It was a way to regain autonomy, something she had never had the chance to do before. The decision wasn't impulsive. She researched, compared prices, read everything carefully. She thought about the time she would have to organize, the longer nights, the extra tiredness. She knew it wouldn't be easy to juggle everything. Even so, she felt that the effort would make sense. It wasn't an expense, it was a silent investment, a small but firm step. Upon confirming her registration, Sarah felt a mixture of fear and hope. There were no guarantees of success, but there was a sense of doing something responsible. Doing the right thing, for her, had always been about paving the way, not waiting for shortcuts. That choice reflected exactly that. It depended on no one but herself. She didn't tell anyone about the course, not out of secrecy, but for protection. She preferred to let the results speak for themselves later. Sarah knew that this decision could gradually change the course of her life, not immediately, but consistently. It was a seed planted with care. As the routine continued, something new silently fell into place. Sarah began to shift from survival mode to something more stable. Without realizing it, this choice began to redefine her relationship with the future. And while she internally reorganized herself, someone watched everything from a distance, waiting for very different signs. Ethan watched everything from a distance, without interfering, as he had decided from the beginning. He didn't call, didn't demand, didn't ask for explanations. Part of him expected exactly what he had always seen before: impulsive spending, emotional choices, small excesses that would eventually become big problems. He mentally prepared himself for disappointment, almost as a form of self-protection. Past experience had taught him to expect the worst. In the first few days, he carefully observed every recorded movement. Instead of luxury or extravagance, he saw only the essentials being taken care of. Food, bills, basic organization. Nothing out of place, nothing that caught his attention. It didn't match the script he had created in his own head. Still, he kept his distance, hoping that this was just the beginning. As time passed, the surprise began to feel unsettling. There were no excesses, no signs of loss of control. On the contrary, there was discipline. Every decision seemed calculated, almost methodical. Ethan realized he wasn't dealing with someone testing limits, but with someone honoring a chance. This realization unsettled him. He wasn't used to seeing this kind of behavior. What bothered him most was noticing the attention to detail. There were no attempts to justify choices or unnecessary explanations. Sarah simply did what needed to be done. This shattered the narrative he had built over the years about help and dependence. For the first time, he began to question whether his distrust was truly prudence, or if it had transformed into something harsher. Ethan felt an internal conflict growing. Part of him wanted to find a flaw, something that would confirm his beliefs. Another part was beginning to respect what he saw. This conflict forced him to confront something he had avoided for a long time. Perhaps the problem wasn't just with the people. Perhaps it was in the way he chose to see them. Sarah's discipline wasn't ostentatious. It was natural. She didn't seek approval or recognition. This made everything even more disconcerting for him. He realized that this woman wasn't trying to prove anything. She was simply living responsibly. This simplicity began to crumble his worldview, built on disappointments. Without realizing it, Ethan was being silenced. The gesture he made, hoping to confirm a belief, was having the opposite effect. His confidence, once protected by high walls, was beginning to shift. Not out of naivete, but as a learning experience. Something within him was beginning to change, and that change was far from over. Just before deciding to return the card, Sarah encountered a situation too familiar to ignore. Another single mother in the neighborhood, whom she only knew by sight, was going through a difficult time. There was no direct request, no public display, just subtle signs of someone at their breaking point. Sarah recognized it immediately because she had been in that exact spot before. It wasn't curiosity, it was identification. She didn't tell anyone, nor did she ask for their opinion. The decision was silent, almost automatic. Sarah went into the market and bought basic groceries, nothing more than necessary. Rice, milk, a few simple items that would make an immediate difference. There was no heroic gesture there, only humanity. She knew that that little bit could ease an entire week. When handing over the bags, there were no lengthy explanations. Sarah spoke little, as always. She didn't want to embarrass or seem superior. She made a point of keeping everything simple, almost casual. The other woman tried to refuse, but Sarah insisted carefully. It wasn't charity, it was practical empathy, a silent recognition from someone who understands the other's pain. She didn't tell anyone about it, not out of fear, but out of consistency with her values. Kindness, for her, didn't need an audience. It was an intimate, almost invisible gesture. Sarah knew that what she was doing came from a genuine place, a direct reflection of her own experience with financial hardship. At that moment, something clicked inside her. There was no guilt in using some of the money that way. On the contrary, there was clarity. Helping someone in that situation seemed as necessary as paying a bill. It was doing the right thing, even if no one saw it. This gesture reinforced who she was when she had a choice. Sarah also knew that this help wouldn't solve everything. It wouldn't create dependency or change the other woman's life forever, but it would create relief, even if temporary. And sometimes that's all someone needs to keep going. She knew that feeling well. A small respite can sustain entire days. As Sarah went about her routine, she didn't imagine that this gesture would say much more about her character than any personal expense. That silent choice carried a moral weight difficult to measure. And even without knowing it, she was about to be observed again. The moment to return the card was approaching, and with it, an inevitable tension. The reunion happened simply, without preparation or formality. Sarah arrived with the card carefully tucked away, as if carrying something too fragile to be exposed. There was a visible weight in her posture, not of guilt, but of apprehension. She didn't know how that conversation would end. Even having used everything consciously, the fear of judgment was present. That moment concentrated weeks of silent choices. Upon handing over the card, Sarah avoided direct contact for a few seconds. The shame didn't stem from having used it, but from having needed it. She apologized in a restrained, almost automatic way for any expense that might seem excessive. She didn't try to justify anything, nor explain each decision. Her voice was low, firm, and defenseless. It was the posture of someone who respects the trust placed in them. Ethan received the card without saying anything. The gesture was calm, but the silence that followed stretched longer than expected. He didn't react immediately, didn't smile, didn't comment. For Sarah, those seconds seemed too long. The atmosphere became heavy, as if the air had grown thicker. Everything she did seemed to be being evaluated at that very moment. Sarah felt her heart race. She wondered if she had made some invisible mistake, if something that seemed right to her could be seen differently. There was no regret, but there was insecurity. She stood upright, without trying to explain herself beyond what was necessary. She knew that this moment demanded more silence than words. Ethan, for his part, was organizing thoughts he hadn't expected to have. The delay in his response wasn't strategy, it was impact. He needed a few seconds to understand what he was feeling. What was before him didn't fit any previous expectations. This demanded more than an automatic reaction. The silence weighed heavily on both of them, but for different reasons. For Sarah, it was fear of disappointing. For Ethan, it was the recognition of something he couldn't yet name. Neither of them made a move to break the silence. There was a mutual respect that kept everything suspended. That seemingly simple moment carried more meaning than any long conversation. The returned card symbolized much more than money. It represented choices, values, and respected boundaries. What Ethan would say next had the power to confirm or dismantle everything. And in that heavy silence, something inside him began to break. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice was different than usual. There was no rehearsed firmness or emotional control. He admitted, with rare honesty, that he had never been so affected by someone. He said he went into that situation expecting to make a mistake, almost counting on it. He trusted, already prepared for disappointment, as he always had. That was the way he had found to protect himself over the years. He explained that he believed money always ended up revealing hidden intentions, that most of the time it exposed excesses, dependence, and lack of responsibility. That's what he expected to find, but what he saw was the opposite. Discipline, care, and conscious choices. Nothing there confirmed his old beliefs. On the contrary, everything challenged them. Ethan spoke of character with difficulty, as if the word had physical weight. He said he saw dignity where he expected opportunism. He saw responsibility where he imagined abuse. Each of Sarah's decisions dismantled a piece of the armor he had built. It forced him to reconsider not only that gesture, but his entire view on helping. It was a direct confrontation with his own convictions. As he spoke, Ethan's eyes began to fill with tears. There was no attempt to disguise or contain them. He didn't offer a formal apology, but acknowledged something deeper. He said that the experience made him realize how closed off he had become to people, how much he had confused prudence with coldness. It had struck him in a place he had long avoided. The tears came without warning, silent and sincere. It wasn't sadness, it was a breakdown. Years of accumulated distrust dissolving in a few seconds. Ethan didn't care about maintaining an image of control. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel. That moment didn't need to be beautiful, it needed to be real. Sarah listened to everything in silence, without interrupting. There was no pride, no sense of victory, just the awareness that something important was happening there. She didn't try to comfort him or minimize the impact. She respected the space of that moment. Sometimes, empathy is also knowing when to be silent. At that moment, Ethan understood that he hadn't been the one offering a chance. He was the one who had received a second chance to see things differently. The trust he considered risky had proven transformative, and even without knowing exactly what he would do from then on, he knew one thing. That story wasn't over yet. Something bigger was about to be born from that encounter. After that moment, Ethan understood that helping didn't have to be an impulsive gesture or a blind risk. For the first time in a long time, he clearly saw that responsibility and empathy could go hand in hand. It wasn't about saving someone, but about creating fair conditions. He decided that any support from then on needed to generate autonomy, not dependence. This realization completely changed his approach. Helping now had a purpose. Ethan was clear and direct about what he would do next. There would be no infinite money or easy solutions. The focus would be on real opportunity, something that would sustain the future. He chose to support decisions that strengthened character and independence. No shortcuts, no excessive control. It was a commitment based on trust and well-defined boundaries. Something that respected both sides. Sarah listened attentively, without unrealistic expectations. She didn't want to win everything. She never had. What she sought was stability, something that had always seemed distant. Knowing she would have support without losing her dignity brought a relief that was difficult to explain. That approach made sense to her. It didn't violate her values, nor did it create discomfort. The support came in the form of structure, not excess, continuity in the course, practical guidance, time to get organized, small adjustments that changed the basis of her routine. Sarah began to see the future with less fear and more clarity. There was no guarantee of wealth, but there was direction, and that alone transformed everything. Gradually, financial hardship ceased to dictate every decision. It didn't disappear completely, but it lost absolute control. Sarah began to plan, not just react. Each step reinforced her inner confidence. She wasn't dependent, she was building, and that made all the difference. For Ethan, the learning experience was equally profound. He realized that earning respect comes more from listening than from giving. Helping responsibly required presence, not just resources. That experience rescued something he had lost along the way, the ability to truly connect with another human story. Nothing there seemed grand to an outsider. There was no announcement, no perfect ending, but something essential had changed for both of them. A life-changing decision had been made, based on simple values and conscious choices. What began as a test of trust ended as a redefinition of purpose, and this silent transformation would still echo far beyond that encounter. Sarah didn't become a millionaire, but he recovered something the system had taken away: dignity. Ethan learned that trust still exists. Sometimes, a simple choice is worth more than money. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel. Here, true stories show that character still matters. Like this, post and comment on what you would have done in this situation, and share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances.